Zoom before. If you're on a computer, this may be, well, minus the fact that you now see my screen, maybe kind of what it looks like. So if you need to, you can mute yourself here. You can turn your video on and off. You don't necessarily have to have your video on. And then you can see the participants, and then there's a chat function here. So if at any point there's a question, you can go to chat, ask your question that way, or you can just interrupt me and ask a question. That's fine too, whichever way you feel comfortable. And then your end meeting here when we're done. If you're on a phone, it probably looks something like this. So it's similar. Your chat function is just a little bit harder to find. It would be under more, and then it goes to like I think actually maybe it's under participants. I don't know. I found it earlier, and it's under there somewhere, but it's like buried under participants. So you probably just will need to ask a question verbally. Yeah. So just a little bit about myself. I went to Cornell. I studied ag science there. I grew up on what was a dairy farm that kind of turned into a hobby farm. My parents sold the cows when I was about 8. But we did hay for the rest of, actually my parents are still doing hay and selling hay. So I used farm equipment that way. And I also, my significant other has a shop at home. So he works on ag equipment and other machinery and like logging equipment. So I get to see a lot of equipment. And so I grew up in Delaware County, and now I live in Shenango County. This is my family's farm. And then I raised goats when I was in high school. And then I took a bunch of animal science classes I really enjoyed in college as well. So here is one thing. I took this picture out of my baby album, actually, and I always loved this photo growing up, but now that I'm in this position teaching about ag safety, there's a couple of things wrong with it. So can you guys tell me what's wrong with this photo?
Do any of you guys have audio turned on so you can talk to us?
There's 2 people in the seat.
Yep. There's an extra rider. Anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead and just jump in, guys, if you have any answers.
Hey.
How
They're
about
probably too young to drive.
Yeah, probably. And certainly, if you know 2-year-olds at all, I was probably pretty squirmy, and they can get away from you. So there is a possibility that I could fall off somehow and get run over by the tractor, possibly. But there's something else that's missing from this tractor in general. No? Okay. So it doesn't have a ROPS on it. And so we'll talk about the importance of ROPS, which is rollover protective structures. I'm sure you guys knew that. It's hard to jump in on a webinar a lot of times. So we'll keep going. So NYCAMH, the organization I work for, is an entity of Bassett Healthcare Network, based out of Cooperstown. Our office is in Fly Creek, right next door to Cooperstown. NYCAMH was started in the 80s when 2 doctors who studied respiratory diseases, they had a lot of farmers coming in with lung issues when they were opening up their silos. And so they started research into farm-related illness and injury. And that turned into what NYCAMH is, where we do research on agriculture-related illness and injury. And we also try to prevent those things by educating, doing outreach, and also providing clinical services to people, like fit testing, lead exposure testing, things like that. So today we have about 35 people on staff and subcontractors throughout New York State. And so we cater to a lot of different audiences, not only the farming community, but also within the scope of agriculture. We do research and services for people in forestry, fishing. I think that we do respirator fit testing for it's over 100 fire departments in the Bassett catchment area now, and other rural businesses. This gets into more of the stuff that I do specifically. So we have an on-farm safety program. We provide training for employees. We do CPR and first aid training for free for farms, and other safety presentations. And I also do on-farm safety surveys, where we look for hazards on people's farm and provide them with a report. It's kind of like just getting a fresh set of eyes on a farm, and for a bunch of different agricultural businesses. Yeah, you guys get this. Okay, so today we're talking about some farm injury statistics. We're going to also talk about common tractor-related incidents and explore how to prevent them. All right. So this picture is a tractor that did a rear overturn. What do you think was happening here?
Too steep.
Yeah, they were trying to pack this and it may have been too steep. So actually this tractor, it didn't have a ROPS on it. This person in this incident actually survived it, and they still use that tractor with a ROPS on it now. But tractor incidents are the most frequent incidents that happen on farms, or machinery related incidents. A lot of times because tractors are used often, sometimes many hours, you're doing a lot of different tasks with them, but they're also really large and powerful. They're stronger than people, and oftentimes people are performing tasks when they're stressed. They may be in a hurry, they're tired. Making certain safety upgrades may be expensive and they can't afford it. And also every farm that you go to is different.
So guys, real quick, looking at that picture, this is Chris.
Yeah.
If you guys look at that picture, think back when we were up at Glenn's farm last weekend and we were looking at his bunker silos with 12-foot walls. That pile of haylage is probably only 7 or 8 feet tall. And it looks like he was going up the pile and his rear tires went down into a soft spot. You see right behind that rear tire to the right of it, there's a big pocket where it looks like it sunk in. And that's what we were talking about when Glenn gets up towards the top of his bunk, when he's up above the walls in there. When you hit a soft spot and that tractor's rocking back and forth like that, it gets pretty hairy when you're looking down into an empty bunk next to you, 12 feet below you. So in this case, the tractor went over backwards instead of going off the side of the pile sideways. But either way, it's a pretty hairy situation when you're on top of a pile like that.
Thanks, Chris, and feel free to jump in like anytime.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try not to steal the thunder here, but if it pertains to something that we've already talked about a little bit, then I'll just elaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay, so this next slide is a lot of data, but what's more important is the one after this, which lines this up per 100,000 workers. So what we're seeing here is this is the occupations with high fatal work injury rates. So a lot of deaths in those occupations. And so when you kind of bring these numbers like to scale for each of them, you see that logging and fishers are the top two. Farmers, ranchers, and other agricultural managers is at number 7, which actually went up from the previous data. that we had for this. It was at number 8, now it's at number 7. And so it's still really high within all industries. So if you look, I put the data here, and farmers and the ranchers rate is 24.7 per 100,000 workers. It's a lot of math, but when you compare that to all workers, the rate for of fatalities in like all industries, it's much higher. It's like 7 times higher because all workers is 3.5 there. So it's a pretty dangerous industry, is what I'm trying to say here.
Now, one other thing, I'll just jump in on that, guys, just so you know, a lot of times you see this data set, you'll see agriculture as a general term when they're talking about, the rate of death per 100,000 workers or whatnot. If you look at the top 2 up there, logging workers and then fishers and related fishing workers, typically a lot of studies will actually lump those 2 in under agriculture with farmers, ranchers, and other ag managers. So a lot of times you'll see just general farming lumped with logging and fishing, because technically they're all providing some form of, income by working the land or harvesting something from the land. So in this case, this is pretty cool. It actually breaks it out separate, and it makes general farming actually seem, and it shows that it's a little bit safer than those other ones above it. But it also still, that 24.7 versus the 3.5 for general, across the board labor, still shows how much more dangerous it is relative to most other professions.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So next we'll move on. Here's a couple of the major types of farm incidents that we see. So tractors, like I said, are at the top. Machinery related incidents, I guess. We're seeing more and more roadway incidents as size of machinery increases on roads, and also people get more separated from the farm, don't understand the way maybe that these pieces of equipment move on the roads. Also, slips and falls are responsible for a lot of injuries. Livestock handling, asphyxiation and engulfments, and other types of injuries as well. So I wanted to include this, though I don't really like this slide as much as this one. So this I took from the National Children's Center for Rural Agricultural Health and Safety, something like that. It's the top 3 causes of injuries and fatalities in youth on farms. So if you see, their data shows that the most fatal source comes from machinery and motor vehicles like ATVs, UTVs, and then also it's under the non-fatal as well. So when we're talking about tractors, it's really important because it does cause a lot of injuries and deaths. This is just a map of some data that we had put together. This is a 20-year span, 96 to 2016, of youth ages 1 through 16 killed in farm accidents. I don't know, I usually look this up beforehand. I don't know exactly which one is Tompkins, I'm sorry, not Tompkins, Tioga County. Do you guys have any in that county on this map?
We have one. Tioga County, if you're looking along in the southern tier, right along the southern border there, south of where Ithaca would be.
Okay.
Tioga County is the one almost right centered in the pictorial that has the dots for a count of 1.
Yep.
We're the one to the left. Immediately to our left is a county with 0. That's Chemung County. Immediately to our right is another county with dots for 1, which is Broome County. We're the one that kind of looks like a square with a little nub sticking up in the top right corner of it.
Yep, that's a great description. All right, yeah. So you had 1, which doesn't seem like a lot in a 20-year time span. But if you look at the number that happened across New York State in that time span, it's a lot, and it doesn't need to happen.
And we actually spoke to the kids this past weekend. We actually the youth that was our number, the one fatality in the county that's documented actually was a participant in this course, and he was killed in a silo unloader about 14 years ago. I think it was the year after he took our course here. So,
Wow.
yep.
Okay, so this circles back around to that. Okay. Okay. So I just have a bunch of pictures I put together here first to kind of get us talking, I hope. So can you guys tell me what you think is wrong with this photo? Everything.
Well, when they're up there, and it's more likely to fall down over.
Yeah.
And there's young kids up there, so they could just go and run off of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, you never know what little kids are gonna do.
Yeah, you don't.
Who's gonna let them down?
Yeah.
That's true.
How about, guys, the fact that other than their, totally using that machine for other than its use, what about the fact that they're being supported up in the air by hydraulics? We just had that discussion too.
Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah,
hydraulic
sure.
cylinder holding them up in the air.
Yep.
But the piece of cardboard could always break in half too, or something.
Yeah, I don't think that plywood's probably that's a lot of people on that with not a lot of support. Do you think that forklifts are designed to lift people on the forks?
No.
Not really.
No. So there are
Not that type of
forklifts.
forklift.
Yeah, there are forklifts that are designed for this job, but they have a special like cage on it. Yeah, thank you. And they're rated
They have a
specifically to
man
do this
basket
job.
on there with a safety rail all the way around it so that you
Yep.
can't fall out of it.
Yep. Which does not look like this one.
No, it does not.
This is not safe either. All right, so I was thinking the last time I did this presentation, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Peterson Farm Brothers. Yeah. And so I was thinking about them. They had been at the Ag Forum this year. And they did they performed a couple of their songs with their videos. And it made me think about some of the things that I saw in their videos that were unsafe. So I just wanted I took a couple screenshots of the things they were doing in their videos. So this is one. So we just talked about this in the other photo. This is hydraulically raised attachment. So this could come crashing down with him on it. He's got his full weight. He's like doing pull-ups on those spikes there.
Yeah, for any of you guys who can't tell what that is, he has a couple of bale spears on the front end loader of a tractor, and he has it raised up in the air, and he's doing pull-ups on the bale spears.
Yep.
But that front end loader is held up by, you guessed it, hydraulics.
So this one is actually they're lifting. It's really blurry, but they're lifting their sister up and down in this bucket in this video. So it's just a still shot of it, but they were just like it was going up and down in the video. So that is unsafe as well. Don't put people in a bucket. This one, they are on a tractor. They're all kind of leaning off. The tractor was moving in this part of the video. So what's unsafe with that?
They could fall
Fall.
off and get run over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so certainly don't be on the steps when it's moving. I'm sorry, was someone saying something? Okay. All right, so this one is another shot. They did a video where they're kind of like falling asleep in the tractor because they spend so many hours in the tractor at harvest time. And so this is actually a reality. This can happen. People work a lot of long hours at harvest, so make sure that you're well rested and prepared and ready to do whatever task it is that you have ahead of you.
Yeah, not that you guys would know or whatever, but he's actually in a combine there, not even in a tractor. Combining is one of the times a year when you're really, really rushing to get harvest in while you have good windows of weather. And there's some of the longest hours on a farm is harvest season, planting season in the spring and harvest season in the fall, when you're really trying to just hammer the field work and take advantage of the opportunities you have with the good weather windows. So that leads to a lot of extra fatigue in those days.
Okay, and so this is my last one of those photos, another blurry one. But what could this person possibly have been doing?
Not looking where it was going.
Yeah,
Taking a nap.
maybe taking a nap. Maybe also looking back behind them too. Maybe texting and driving.
Yeah, that too.
All right, so we'll get into this here. So tractors, like I said, are the leading cause of fatalities on farms. They're designed to be more powerful than we are. They're designed to do work that we are not able to do ourselves, to be more powerful, faster than us at doing whatever it is that we want them to do.
Hey guys, notice on that slide what the ROPS on that tractor did when it flipped over backwards. Remember that red tractor at the beginning that was right flat upside down? Now look at the difference to this one.
Yep, so that ROPS doesn't prevent you from overturning, but it does prevent you from going further than 90 degrees in any one direction. So that helped this person in this scenario. I believe this person, it looks like they were brush hogging, maybe got caught on a stump or something like that. Okay, so first we'll talk about side overturns. So we have two different types of overturns: side overturns, rear overturns. Which one do you guys think is more common of the two?
Side.
Yeah, side overturns. And then which one of the two do you think is more fatal?
Rear.
Yeah, yep. And so why do you think so?
You can jump off on the side.
Yeah, you're more likely to get thrown out of the way with side overturns, whereas the rear, it's really hard to get out of the way when it's coming back down on you. So the side overturns account for about 75% of overturns. They're less likely to be fatal since you could be thrown clear. So they're usually caused by either gravity or centrifugal force, or both of these forces at play. You guys know what gravity is, I'm sure. What's centrifugal force? Any ideas?
When you start going and going and going and you can't stop.
Yeah, so it's actually an outward force, like in a circular motion. So I like to think of it as when you're in the car and you're going around a corner too fast, and do you know that pull that you guys feel to the side? That's what that is, centrifugal force.
Yeah, a lot of you guys ride four-wheelers, you said. And so a lot of you should know when you're turning on a four-wheeler, especially at higher speeds, when you say you make a hard turn to the left and you're going at a pretty good clip, if you don't lean to the left into that turn, the tendency is to try to throw you off the four-wheeler to the outside of the turn, off to the right side of the four-wheeler. That's centrifugal force that's trying to pull you off the machine. And it increases the faster you're going.
Yep. And with tractors, they have a very high center of gravity. So that means they're more unstable in regards, like, compared to something else that's lower to the ground. So when they're on rough or uneven ground, they're much more likely to roll than something that has a lower center of gravity. So how do we prevent side overturns? We can set our wheels on our tractor wide. Usually when I'm in person, I have a tractor that's got a very narrow front end, like a John Deere A or something like that. So that has a very narrow front wheelbase, which makes it less stable than something that has a very wide front wheelbase. So you can also set your wheels wide on the tractor. Also make sure you're driving at appropriate speeds, especially on turns. So slow down for turns. Avoid crossing steep slopes, because if you're at an angle, driving across a steep slope instead of up and down, gravity is not your friend. And that could cause you to turn over on your side. And also keep your loader boom low. And so if you're carrying your bucket high on your tractor, it actually decreases the amount of slope basically that you would need for that to tip over. So what I'm trying to say is that you could tip over on a less steep slope or something like that when you're carrying your bucket high than if you were carrying it low.
Yeah, as you raise that bucket up, you're raising the center of gravity of that machine, which is giving gravity more leverage to work with to pull you over sideways. So the higher you raise it, the easier it is to tip over at, and the less of a slope it takes to do so.
Yeah. So another thing is to avoid ditches if possible.
That's an expensive day.
Yeah, it is. So I don't think these people were probably too happy about this. But it looks like this ditch kind of caved in a little bit. This edge broke off here. So how far, I'll ask you guys, how far away do you think you should try to stay from ditches or things like that?
As far as you can without driving in the ditch or on the other side of the road.
Yeah. Like sometimes you're not going to be able to stay away if there's like if you're driving over a culvert or something like that, obviously. But we recommend to stay as far away from the ditch as it is deep. So if it's 3 feet deep, try to stay at least 3 feet away. In that instance, if you can stay your whole equipment's width away or as far away as you can, then that's even better. Here's another one. This person went off this ledge here, and this person was actually pinned under this tractor for a while. And even though it has a ROPS, he wasn't wearing his seatbelt. So he was thrown, but his legs were pinned under the tractor. So it took a while for emergency responders to show up to this incident. And I think you guys have already talked about emergency response on farms, right?
Yeah, we did. Yep, we had a whole meeting with a first responder and a demonstration by the local fire department about how they use airbags to raise equipment in this exact situation to get people extricated from underneath it.
Oh, great. Perfect. So sometimes though, I mean, it's not going to be 5 minutes. People have to come from somewhere, go get the proper equipment and stuff to respond to you. So it took about an hour for responders to get there. If it had been much longer, they may have had to amputate this person's leg, I think. And also, if you notice in this picture, this is like a stream bed here, and the water happened to be really low this year. So if this person, if the water had been where it normally is, this person probably would have just drowned because they would have been pinned under there and not able to get up above water level.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was about to before you did. That's actually, there have been several documented cases where the person was pinned under the tractor and their injuries didn't kill them. They just drowned because they rolled into a ditch or a creek or something like that, and they just couldn't breathe and they couldn't get up, swim away for air because they were trapped.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more later about the importance of wearing seatbelts in these situations. So, just another reminder not to cross steep slopes. Keep your bucket low. So instead of like this, keep it low to the ground. A couple more ways to prevent side overturns. Lock your brakes together while you're traveling. So you guys have probably seen this already. Kind of like in this picture, you're able to lock your brakes together. What does it do? What do your two brake pedals do?
Stop both of your wheels at the same time.
Yeah, so that's what happens if you lock them together. So each of those pedals controls either your right or your left rear tire. So when is an instance where it might make sense not to have them locked together?
When you're in the field.
And doing what?
in field work in a field so you can make turns better?
Yeah, so if you're able to push one of the brakes, you can make tighter turns, which is really handy in certain situations at maybe like a narrow row end, or if you're in a small space like a barn or a shed or something like that. It's really handy. But if you're on the road and you're driving at road speed and um, your brakes are not locked together and you hit that left brake, what's going to happen?
It turned that way.
Yeah, it's just going to stop that tire. And then I believe there's also, I don't know if this is in all tractors, there's usually a differential where if you're braking this tire, the other tire can actually, it starts moving faster. So it'll spin you really fast. If you're going really fast, then you'll get that centrifugal force we talked about, and you'll turn to the side really fast and topple over because you're just going too fast for the turn you're trying to make. Or not trying to make, but the brakes weren't locked together. So lock them together while you're actually traveling or traveling at higher speeds, and when you don't need them to make tight turns. And then use engine braking rather than having to use your brakes. So shift down for things like turn your throttle down, things like that. So this is the same picture that we saw before, but it's getting us into rear overturns. So like we said, they're more likely to be fatal, and they happen really quickly. So this is just an image that shows how fast this can happen. So you get to what we call the point of no return in 3/4 of a second. So do you think that you have time to think in that amount of time to try to get yourself out of the way or react?
Yeah, think back to our first meeting when we talked about reaction times and did that dollar bill demonstration with you guys. You remember what the average brain's reaction time is before you can even assess a threat and start to respond to it?
Too late. Goes right between your feet.
About 3/4 of a second.
So you don't have much more time than that after you hit that point of no return where the tractor is not coming back down the way it came up, and it's going to flip over backwards. You don't have a lot more time than that to try to get out of the way. So that's why they tend to be more fatal. So some causes of rear overturns might be that you're hitching in the wrong place on the tractor, not in the place where it's safe to based on the manufacturer's instructions. May also be starting too fast. I don't know about you, but I've done this too many times, probably when I'm letting out the clutch and I just let it out instead of letting it out slowly and the tractor jerks forward. Or maybe your throttle's too high when you're letting off the clutch. So keep it slow. Release that clutch slowly. Also, if you're driving up too steep of a slope, that can also, like we saw in the previous picture, cause a rear overturn. So how do we prevent rear overturns? So we can add front end weights to tractors. We can also make sure that we're starting slowly, like I said before, and changing speeds smoothly. Make sure that we avoid ditches and obstructions. Use caution when you're going up and down steep slopes, and if it's too steep, you can also back up it instead of driving forward up it. Make sure that you're only hitching to the drawbar of the tractor, like in this photo here. This is where the manufacturer says this tractor can take the load that you're going to hook onto it, so that should be where you're hitching to the tractor.
Yeah, think back to the demonstration I showed you guys real quick at the end of our meeting when we were at Lindsay's, where she was sitting in the folding chair, and when I grabbed down low on the bar, on that bar at the bottom of the chair, like where the drawbar height would be, I could just slide her backwards when I pulled on it. But then as soon as I grabbed at the top of the chair, she just tipped over backwards instead of sliding. That's exactly the point here. The lower you hitch, the less likely it's going to give you the leverage to have a rear overturn.
You guys have already done and seen a lot of really cool things. That's a really good way to visualize it. Okay, so here is an implement that's hitched in the proper location. And then make sure that you're traveling up and down slopes instead of across slopes. Make sure they're not too steep to be traveling up them. So we've already talked a little bit about rollover protective structures. We said that it limits the rollover to 90 degrees. It doesn't actually prevent it. And you have to wear the seatbelt for the ROPS to be most effective. And what that does is it helps you to hold the operator in the protective zone of the ROPS. There's a lot of words on one page, but it's basically saying that a ROPS is required for tractors that employees operate. So if you're employed somewhere at a farm, they should have a ROPS on the tractor that you have to use. There should be a seatbelt, and there should also be a label like this somewhere on the ROPS that says that this is the proper, it basically certifies that this is the proper ROPS for whatever piece of equipment is that you're using, that it's been tested to be able to handle the impact of that tractor turning over. So it will hold up basically in the event of a rollover. Also make sure you fasten your seatbelt with ROPS. Alternatively, if a tractor doesn't have a ROPS, let's say you're just on your family's at home or something like that, there's not a requirement to have a ROPS. So you may have tractors that don't have them. Should you wear a seatbelt on a tractor with no ROPS?
No.
No, why?
So you can get one out of the way.
Yeah, and think to that reaction time that we just talked about. Are you going to have time to be able to take your seatbelt off in the event that you're in the middle of a rear overturn?
No.
No, you're not. So if you don't have it on, then you're more likely to be able to get out of the way. It's still safer to actually have the ROPS and wear the seatbelt. So I have this. I hope I can do this. I pulled up a video. I don't know if it will work well or play at the right speed. This one. Can you guys see YouTube right now or no?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So okay. This is a demo. It's kind of like the demo that I usually do when I'm in person. And so I'll just play it. So this person, ooh. Can you guys hear the sound when that plays?
No, I can't hear the sound.
Okay,
Nope.
I don't really want you guys to be able to hear the sound. I just want to be able to like comment on it.
The other thing, guys, too, if you're having trouble seeing it, take a quick note, jot down the name of that video, and you can always YouTube it later if you're not getting it good. If it's
Yeah.
buffering or taking too long to play.
Yeah. I tried to test it earlier. It looked like it might be slow. And some of your connections might make it slower. But I'll just play it, see what we can do with it. So what he's doing here, he's got an egg on a tractor, no roll bar, no seatbelt, and he's pulling it across, and it hits this possibly a ditch that collapses, and tractor rolled over. So you can see the egg was kind of thrown out of the way, but certainly not protected by the tractor at all. In the next scenario, so this one, the egg, we've got a smarter farmer here, decided to get a ROPS on the tractor, and so this egg has a ROPS but is not wearing a seatbelt. So the tractor turned over, and the egg was thrown from the tractor. Wasn't kept in the protective zone of the rocks. And then you can see as he turns the egg over that he's kind of crushed. And somewhere here later in the